All right, thank you everyone for joining us today for our Been There, Done That panel. Um, Today's panel is hosted by the Krieger School's Second Decade Society. This is a group of dedicated Krieger alumni leaders in their second decade from graduation. To let everyone quickly know the format today, we're going to do a round of introductions with our panelists. We have a few pre-selected questions, but then we're going to open up a Q&A for the audience. If you have a question for the panel as a whole or for a specific panelist, we just ask that you please type the questions into the Q&A section on the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we just wanted to let you know that we will be recording this session for those who might need to leave early or others who couldn't join us today, but were interested in hearing the insights of our panelists. My name is Matthew Golden. I am the Executive Director of the Life Design Lab here on Homewood's campus. The Life Design Lab replaced the Career Center, and our focus is very much engaging with our students and engaging our students with immersive learning opportunities and the vast network that Hopkins offers them of alumni, employers, so that they can explore potential lives and be able to create the initial steps forward to living not only a fulfilling professional life, but also a fulfilling, well-balanced professional and personal life, to understand values, to understand opportunities that fit those values, and to explore those pathways forward. So today, we have three really phenomenal Hopkins alumni. They're here to share their stories on how they navigated challenge, career transition, and/or job disruption. So without further ado, our panelists today, we have Bennett Degen. He is a longtime financial industry participant. Currently, he's a financial advisor affiliated with the Investment Center in Bedminster, New Jersey. In that role, Bennett advises individuals, families, and small businesses in the planning and structuring of their retirements, the financial protection of their beneficiaries, and the preservation of their estates and family businesses. Excuse me. Mr. Degen received a BA in International Studies from Johns Hopkins and an MBA in Finance and International Business from the Leonard Stern School of Business at New York University. Next, we have Melissa Fensterstock, who is the CEO of Landsdowne Labs. Melissa is a seasoned biotech, medtech, and consumer product executive with extensive experience in transitioning novel technologies into valuable products and brands. She is the CEO and co-founder of Landsdowne Labs, where she secured approximately $3 million in funding for her seed round. Landsdowne Labs is a spin-off of the world-renowned Langer Lab, and the company's first product, ChildLok, is an innovative button battery technology. It's designed to deactivate batteries following accidental ingestion. Thank you from someone who has 3 young kids, made possible by advanced material science. She has a BA in Neuroscience from Hopkins, a master's in Bioscience Enterprise from the University of Cambridge, and an MBA from the Harvard Business School. We also have Jessica Spiegel, who has served as Vice President for Member Experience at Summus Inc. Summus informs medical decisions through fast, direct access to the world's best medical expertise. The platform empowers families through navigation support and on-demand access to leading specialists across 48 different leading hospitals. Prior to joining Summus, Jessica worked at Gerson Lerman Group as a Vice President of Research and Senior Research Manager for Legal, Economic, and Regulatory Affairs. She graduated from Hopkins in 2003 with her bachelor's in history, and she received her JD from Fordham University School of Law in 2008. I also would like to thank both Jessica and Melissa, who are members of the Second Decade Society, for their continued commitment to engaging with our students, with our alumni, with our entire community. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the next few minutes over to our panelists, starting with Bennett, then Melissa, then Jessica, and maybe go a little bit more in depth than the overview bio. Talk maybe a little bit about your current work, anything that I failed to cover or needs a little bit more illumination. Your involvement with Hopkins and the Hopkins community, and why you volunteered today to speak about working through career disruption or navigating this not so linear path that we call life. So Bennett, without further ado, please.
Thank you. Okay, a little bit on my background. So I graduated Hopkins in '89, and at least at that time, there were few people who wanted to go into finance. I had an aunt who worked in the financial services industry at a firm that was known as Drexel Burnham back in the day. I think it went out of business in about 1990, which a lot of the firms I've been are no longer in business. I'm not sure what that says about the financial services industry. So I had to find my own way at that time because the career counseling was much more focused, was much more focused geographically in the Baltimore, Washington area, and not really so much focused in financial services in New York. And I know, being somewhat involved in the finance group and attend their events 2 or 3 times a year, I know that has changed very much, and very much thanks to Mr. Bloomberg. I ended up starting to work within the financial services industry, worked at firms that were Kidder Peabody, which no longer exists, and UBS, which really no longer exists in its prior way. It was since has been in several mergers, and really started out in risk management for fixed income and derivative products. And about 10 years into that, it sort of evolved in structuring hedge fund linked derivatives, which was a product in the alternative investment industry, which helped to provide different type of institutional investors either principal protection or leverage for their hedge fund investments. And I worked there for 2 firms, a smaller firm, and then for a bank, which is today known as Natixis, for about 10 years in that space, into and through the financial crisis. At that point, I would say victim is a strong word to use, but I was impacted negatively by the financial crisis, and my market, my team, and my job were all jettisoned. At that point, I had to first reinvent myself and really wanted to stay within alternative investments. And I took upon myself a role at an investment office for a university with $1 billion+ endowment, Yeshiva University, which if you Google, you'll see how they were impacted by Mr. Madoff and the financial crisis. So we went about professionalizing the investment office and process there, and building and staffing an investment office. And I did that for about 3 years, and then moved on to a bunch of sundry roles as executives, asset raisers, and partners in different types of alternative investment institutions, culminating when I was with a real estate firm on their hedge fund side into 2019. At that point, it really wasn't working out as much as I would have liked. I wasn't earning the income that I needed to. I now have 2 kids who are in college, and God willing, a 3rd next year. And it was time to make a change. And that is when I transitioned to become a financial advisor, leveraging the product knowledge, the experience, and the skills that I already had to work with people, actually helping people in managing important aspects of their life, helping them with life insurance, with disability income insurance, with long-term care and health insurance, and with financial planning for their retirements. And for the past 1.5 years plus, that is what I have been doing. And I found it to be a very rewarding area. For the first time in my life and first time in my career, I feel like I'm directly helping, assisting, and impacting people. And it's a lot nicer, it feels better when you go to sleep at night, knowing that you've helped people or impacted people for the better. That everything I do, it's products that people need. I'm not trying to just take a commoditized product and sell it to someone because it might be a good thing for them or for their institution, but is really no different than 100 other products out there on the market. Here, I'm trying to help people to make sure that if God forbid something happened to them, their family would be protected. or if they could no longer work, that their income would be protected. Or when they retire, they're not going to outlive their assets. And it has been very rewarding, be honestly, through COVID and in the COVID era that we now live in. It has been a little bit more difficult to sell because there are no more face-to-face meetings, and this is a deeply personal product that people purchase, and it's very personal and it's very bespoke for each individual. And for that matter, not having face-to-face meetings and only really speaking to people on the phone and on Zoom have impacted my ability to do my job effectively. And can't wait for this to be over, but I'm not taking any precautions in that matter. We all mask up every time we leave the office. I've been involved in Hopkins in a different ways since I graduated. I've mentioned I go to the financial events. I've interviewed on behalf of Hopkins, and honestly, people who came after me are so much more prepared and so much more smarter than I could ever manage to be. I don't think I would get into Hopkins today if I applied. I interview these kids who save the world on Saturday and then support their families on Sundays. I played basketball on Saturday and watched football on Sundays when I was in high school. And I'm just in awe of all the students and all the alum who've come after me. And why I did this? Because they asked. And always happy to share advice if I can help people.
Thank you, Bennett. We greatly appreciate you being here. So thank you for continuing to engage.
Thank you.
Melissa, why don't you?
Sure. So I guess I'll start with the last questions first, just so I don't forget to address them. So I recently joined the Second Decade Society, and I'm looking forward to helping out and mentoring students and advising wherever I can. I actually did, as part of Landsdowne Labs, hire a Hopkins grad. He had a PhD, but nonetheless was a Hopkins grad. So that felt really nice to be able to hire him into Landsdowne Labs, and he's been doing a phenomenal job. And then in terms of why I'm doing this panel, Meredith, who's involved with SDS, asked me to join. And of course, I'm happy to speak to my experiences. And actually, I do have a lot of relevant, I think, helpful experience for you guys on the phone. So there's always like the happy story or the interview story you tell people, right? When you're interviewing for a job, it's like the most polished, seamless transition of your interests and why you went from A to B to C, but really it's like all over the place. And often there are some things that you don't necessarily always want to highlight. So I'm happy to highlight those here for you today because they often do go untold. So I was at Hopkins, I was a neuroscience major, I was pre-med. I studied really hard for the MCAT, didn't do that great. I was like, do I really want to go to med school? So at the 9th hour, I started all my applications. I hadn't submitted them. And I decided, you know what? I'm not actually interested in taking care of patients. I'm really interested in the business behind science. So I had applied to a master's degree at Cambridge University, which at the time was one of the only schools that had this interdisciplinary program between biotech and business. And I thought it'd be a nice time to just take a break and go overseas because I didn't have the opportunity to study abroad during undergrad because I was so worried about fitting in all of my coursework that I didn't go. So I went to England for the year and really loved this program. And if anyone on the line ever wants to talk about it, I'm happy to. It's a really great program. It was definitely a wonderful break, and it reinforced that I definitely didn't want to go to med school, that I wanted to go to business school eventually. So after this master's degree, I worked for a small consulting company, a life science strategy consulting firm in New York. I started there in end of 08, and was the last one in. So the first one let go in 09, early 9. So that was awful. It was really not fun, but probably similar to the times today. And quickly got another job at a company called Stryker, which is a medical device company. And I worked there for a few years until I went to Harvard Business School. So yeah, it really was not fun to get laid off, but it happens, and it's happening now, and it's just a fact of life. And it doesn't mean you're not good. It just means that, there's exogenous factors going on. So then after business school, I joined a company called Elsevier and did a management rotation program, which was great, but it was too big of a company, and I really liked startups. So I ended up joining a biotech company in New York running corporate development there, which means like partnering technology, out licensing and in licensing. And that company also failed and imploded for a variety of reasons. You could probably write a book on why it failed, but that happened. And then I ran a consumer product company with my husband for a couple of years as I was having my first child, and helping my husband out start this company, and working really, really hard. Never took maternity leave because when you're a small business owner, you can't really do that. And then that company also ended up with a lot of problems. So that company, it was during the Zika virus time, and we were in the bug spray business, and we just ended up getting on the government's radar and not having really, in our opinion, done anything wrong. So we decided to shut that company down. But that was a really exhausting and awful experience as well, but really had a great time building the business. And there are a lot of great skills that I learned from being an entrepreneur. And that's what put me in a position to be able to get the job that I have today, working with a really famous scientist and commercializing technology out of a lab, which is what I love to do. So it definitely doesn't feel like I have a job. It feels like, for the first 9 months, I worked for free because I was building the company and raising money, but it never really bothered me because I just loved what I did. So, and even now I love what I'm doing. So it feels great. And yeah, I've been really, really happy. So yeah, while you may have twists and turns or bad things that happen, you can always position it in a positive light. And there's always really great learnings that come out of every job that you have, and learning that you don't want to do something is just as valuable as learning that you do want to do something. So it is really important to try. And I forgot to say, like, I had a summer internship in investment banking when I was in business school, and I was the worst investment banker. Like, I should not have been an investment banker. And up until that point, like, coming out of Hopkins, you usually get what you want, like you're a top achiever, and like not getting a job offer was really a blessing because I would have been a horrible investment banker. So you just really need to stick to what you think you're really good at, and it's okay to try things and not and learn that you don't want to do them. So I will pause there, hand it over to Jessica.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. So I will also take the questions out of order. So I've been involved with SDS for the past 2 years. I try to attend meetings primarily in New York when I'm able to. And I'm really happy to share my story, and hopefully something that I say resonates with at least one person who is listening or who may listen in the future. Because like Melissa and Bennett had mentioned, I think up until really like your sophomore, junior year of college, your life is very linear. It's very structured. You go to school, you have your assignments, you study, it's fairly formulaic, and then all of a sudden, it's time for you to make a decision in terms of what you want to do. So when I was at Hopkins, I was a history major. So not necessarily probably one of the most popular majors, but I always loved reading. I always loved writing. And I actually always loved learning about different people's stories. And I really gravitated towards social history in particular. So as a history major, I assumed that I would just go to law school because that is what history majors do. So I took the LSAT and I bombed it. I did so poorly on that test, I was in shock. There's this quote, man makes plans and God laughs. Like, I feel like that has been a lot of my life and my professional life in particular. I think you think one thing and then your life, goes in a completely different direction. So I wound up not applying to law school because I wanted to go to a certain type of law school. And then I really didn't know what to do. On a whim, I applied to the London School of Economics. A couple of my friends who were a few years older than me had been studying there. I got in, I was planning to go. And then that summer, I grew up in the New York area. I'm from the suburbs originally. And I was spending a lot of time in the city. And I thought to myself, I think I want to live and work in New York. So I hadn't really, given much thought about what I wanted to do, where I should work. So I applied to a couple different jobs, and I wound up joining, of all things, an executive search firm. And this was having been, an achiever like everybody else. I did really academically, was always at the top of my class. but I took the position because I wanted to live in the city. I wanted to get a job. And so I wound up working there. I was primarily just making cold calls and I was miserable. I'm like, what am I doing at this place? It was a lovely office. It was on 46th and Park. It was, nice to sit in there, but I hated every minute of the day. So then I pivoted and I wound up applying for a job at the JA Federation of New York, which is a very large nonprofit organization that helps to care for impoverished, suffering people throughout the world. I was a researcher in the fundraising department, and simultaneously I thought to myself, okay, I think I'll take the LSAT again and give law school a go. So I took the LSAT. I wanted to stay locally in New York. I was dating someone at the time who now is my husband, and we have 3 children. We've been together for 16 years, so that happens too. Outside of a professional world, you need to fulfill, other aspects of your life. And I was accepted to Fordham Law School. I followed the protocol. I worked for a judge my first summer. My second summer, I worked as a summer associate at Strick & Levan, which is a pretty big firm in New York City. And then after my summer, I was offered a position in the commercial real estate department, which was their top performing department at the time. So I took the position. So I was set to go, but I graduated law school in 2008. So when I began at Strick in the fall, the world fell apart. All the big banks fell, and the economic crisis of 2008 ensued. Lehman Brothers was a huge client of the firms. They were probably, about 30 associate within my department alone who worked on Lehman Brothers deals. And firms across the country began firing people left and right. Many of my friends lost my jobs. I was very anxious. I didn't know what was going on. For whatever reason, I was actually not fired at the time. There were 5 associates in my group. I was one of 2 who remained. And those next 2 years were a very bizarre 2 years to work at that firm in particular for me. It was, crickets for the first 10 months, then it slowly started to get busier. And then when the work started to pile on, I actually started to see what it was like being a junior associate. It was delayed by 10 months because of the absence of client-based work. And I was working, all hours of the day, 6-7 days a week. I never knew when I was coming home for dinner. I was newly married. I never saw my friends. And I thought to myself, I don't think this is the type of life I want to live. And in the fall of 2010, it took me a tremendous amount of courage, but I quit. And some people had counseled me, stick it out, wait another 2 years, you can get a job in-house somewhere else. And I just, my husband and my parents said, you are not happy. You need to do what makes you happy. So I thought the key to my happiness at that point would be to leave. And they were right. I wound up quitting without having another job lined up. And those months following the time when I quit were very, very interesting for me because I think it's really rare. And I was in a position that luckily where I was able to do so. I recognize that not everyone is in a position to do that. But it really gave me a time to self-reflect, which I think I had never really had the opportunity before. You're kind of on this hamster wheel and you're like, going, kind of similar to now, right? Like we've all had the time, or many of us have had the time to kind of reflect and think because the pace of life has slowed down. And I was really trying to think of what I would like to do. And I realized that something that was really important to me was having, more of a balance in terms of my quality of life, where I had more control over my schedule. I'd be able to see my family. I'd be able to, work out, do things that made me feel good in my body, good in my mind. So at that time, I was kind of trying to think of what I wanted to do. I toyed around and attempted to start a wedding advisory company. And I was like, I'm not nearly passionate enough about weddings to start a wedding advisory business. And I thought maybe I should give the law another shot. So I applied to a couple of other law firms. I actually got some offers, but simultaneously I applied for a position in the Legal, Economic, and Regulatory Affairs group at a company called the Gerson Lehrman Group, more commonly known as GLG, which is the world's largest expert network. Coincidentally, My now husband had worked there. He was one of the first employees at that company. So I had always gotten to know employees at that firm. I thought the work that they did was really interesting. Basically, they pair executives and investors with subject matter experts across a wide variety of areas to help investors and executives make more informed business decisions. So within the Legal and Economic Regulatory Affairs department, there worked actually a Hopkins grad who, was probably about 15 years older. I had met him a couple years ago through my husband. I'd reached out to him because there wasn't a position advertised online. I had reached out to him to see if he would talk to me about what he did at GLG and if, there might be a position for me. We met for coffee. We had a great conversation. He introduced me to the head of the group. I had a quick round of interviews and I was accepted. I was offered a position there. And I was like, you know what? I really like these people. I don't think I want to work amongst the lawyers. I think I want to work among these people instead. So I took the job in July of 2011, and I had a great experience at GLG. I met a lot of interesting people. I met a lot of former heads of state, economists, lobbyists, and then really senior investors. And it really also gave me the opportunity to see how people think and make decisions, which I thought was really fascinating. I wound up staying at GLG for 5 years. I decided to leave because I was offered a position to join an early stage healthcare technology company that was founded by my former boss at GLG. So he had left GLG around my 4th year there. We had always kept in touch. He had reached out to me when I was pregnant with my 2nd child. So I was on maternity leave and I, kind of had downtime, not really. So it's busy when you have a little baby at home. But, again, I kind of had some time to think about what I wanted to do. And I thought to myself, when does this opportunity kind of come around? It's really rare. I know him. I trust him. I really like him. I'm going to give it a go. So the company I joined is called Sumis, which was inspired by GLG's business model. So basically, it's a marketplace for specialist expertise. So what we do is we facilitate phone and video consultations with world-class specialists around the world for families. Our primary business line is offering our service as a benefit for high talent companies. So we work with different hedge funds, consulting firms, and other types of companies. And then we work with individual families as well. But my ride at Sumis has not been so linear as well. I think, working at a startup has many, many ups and downs. After I was pregnant with my 3rd child, I don't have more than 3 kids, just 3. I was on maternity leave, and at the time our company was not doing well. We were not, advancing at the pace that we thought we should be. We were running low on cash, and my CEO had asked me if I would take an extended maternity leave unpaid. And I was all ready and raring to go back, after my 3 months, and I was like, oh, okay. I didn't really have a choice. So I had an extended maternity leave. I was home for 7 months. I was kind of, I would have periodic check-ins every month or so to hear what was going on. How's the business doing? Is there capacity for me to come back? And then we landed 2 clients that kind of helped change the trajectory for the better. So I was able to rejoin. But during that time, I thought to myself, do I want to do this again? Do I want to be in this environment? Should I do something different? Should I stay home? I have 3 children. What do I do? But I have, luckily it's a fairly flexible arrangement, and I thought I'm just going to try to give this a go and see if we can really make this work. So since that time, we've landed some really big institutional clients, which has catapulted us. We've been able to actually raise money during the pandemic. We've been incredibly busy. I think, for all of the horrible consequences that have ensued from the pandemic, I think for us at least, we've really been able to help so many people. I mean, never has this time proven out our business model. I think people are very comfortable connecting virtually, and people need guidance and help. And then I think, just upon reflecting on my career and my life after college, it's most certainly, as Melissa had noted, certainly filled with twists and turns. But I think, you know, I was always thought I should be on this specific path. You know, my father was a lawyer. I should be doing something. And I never really felt like I was myself. And I think now I finally feel like I'm in a position. It was when I first joined GLG where I was like, I could be true to myself. I can live the kind of life I want to live. I feel like I'm making an impact. And especially at Sumis, it's a very, very mission-oriented company. I mean, I work with people who have, you know, children with pediatric allergies to family members who have very complex forms of cancer, and are seeking guidance on the latest clinical trials and insights to help, you know, extend their family members' quality of life and potentially save their life. So, you know, I think what we do, or I find it extremely gratifying. So I will pause there as well.
Thank you all for the for your descriptions of the winding roads that have been traveled to get where you all are. I think obviously right in line with what we're hoping to explore in this hour. And you've answered a few of the questions that I was going to ask initially. I do have one to kick us off. I do want to let all of our participants know, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A, and we'll try to get through as many as we can over the next half hour. But I appreciate the fact that we do talk about our successes and we speak about our accomplishments in such a way, Melissa, you said this so wonderfully, but we package it for the audience. And I appreciate all of you sharing about the winding paths that you've traveled, the struggles and setbacks. And one of the things that I heard in so many different ways in each of your stories is that at these critical points where there might have been a struggle, whether it was adversity, life, family changes, industries collapsing, it seems that you all leaned upon some level of self-reflection, looking back into perhaps values or where you stood currently on your life's journey to help inform the next decision. I'd be very interested in hearing your take on how that self-reflection and the opportunity to look at your values helped navigate some of these twists and turns, and also maybe ask, what else did you do in those moments? What did you rely upon that helped you take the next steps forward in a seemingly difficult time? Melissa, you're unmuted, so I'm going to kick it to you.
Okay, yeah, I'll go first. I'm just thinking. That was a very loaded series of questions. I'll just start talking, and if you need to push me in one direction or another, feel free. So, you know, I was on a walk. So I'm in a beautiful place right now. I'm at my parents' beach house, and I feel like these days you can go somewhere else and work. Often, you know, it's not just work from the office these days, right? So being in a place where you can think clearly and you can take walks, and often just leaving my phone and not taking my phone on a walk and having, you know, 30 minutes or an hour just to walk and think and talk is really helpful. So even today I was walking and talking with my husband, and I'm married and I have two little children. And I was saying, you know, career-wise, it's so much easier to say yes than it is to say no, and just to be really reactive, right? So like things come your way and you just say, yes, I'll do it. Yes, I want to do that. Yes, I want to do that. But it's harder to say no to career opportunities, I think. So it's important when you're thinking about what you want to do to like you set your own direction, and not, this is just advice. This is my reflection. For me, at least, it's been really helpful to take the time to say, what do I want to do? What makes me happy? What am I good at? And try and like hone in on things that I know will check a lot of those boxes, and to not be reactionary when opportunities come up. I'll always talk to people, I'll always explore things, but if someone, you know, made me a job offer or like wanted me to be involved with a company, like to say no is actually really hard. So I guess that's something I've been thinking through. I don't really have an answer there, but you just want to chart your own path and not necessarily be reactionary. But on the other hand, you want to be opportunistic, right? So I think that that's a balance. And yeah, in terms of reflection, you know, I thought I wanted to go to med school, and that was a really hard decision to not do that and to do something else. And it worked out great. And I'm really happy that I did it, because cadavers made me like cringe. I like definitely couldn't be doing that for my entire life. So I, had to face reality and be like, I can't take care of sick people. Like, I'm going to be a horrible doctor. Like, why am I doing this? So that was, I guess, another important point. And yeah, what were some of the other about this was about reflection, right? The question.
Part of it is about reflection, but also maybe in the times where you've made these large changes for one reason or another, moving from striker, going back to
Yeah,
school.
sure.
What type of skills or tools did you use to help navigate those changes?
Tools. Definitely my networks, and networks are really, really important, and mentors and talking. I'm a talker, so just talking to as many people as possible and gathering information. And, you ask 100 people, you get 100 answers. So that's also like a challenge also as a business leader too. You can ask everybody their opinion on what business decision or what career decision, but at the end of the day, like, you're the only one who has the whole picture. So while you can ask other people for advice, and it's really important, and you have to, treat yourself as like the hub of the spoke and talk to lots of people and gather all the information. But at the end of the day, you're the only person who has the full picture. And then it's up to you to make that decision, of course, with your loved ones, whoever, is important in your life. But that's, I think, a challenge of being a business leader is like, you have to make the decisions, and you're the one who has all the information. And why did I go to business school? Wanted to go to business school because I wanted to have a business school network. I wanted to have the 2 years to reflect. I think that was a really good period of time. Business school is a great opportunity. I think a few others, I think Bennett, I think you went to business school as well. So it's a nice time to have. Often people will pivot. They'll have, a change of career, and that's totally normal and totally accepted. Some people stay on the same path. So business school, I felt, was like a nice built-in time to have some downtime, think about what I wanted to do, build a great network, learn. I love learning. So that was a really, really good time. So I would, encourage those of you who may need some more structured built-in thinking time, who are interested in business, that's another way to have that. And I highly recommend business school for people who are interested in that type of career path. But it does give you that time for reflection and exploration that I don't think you might necessarily have that time at Hopkins, because you do often feel like you are on that hamster wheel. So I'll pause there.
Either Bennett or Jessica, either of you? Bennett? Oh.
I don't know if he froze. I can take it if I don't know if he's frozen. Like when you talk about values, I think that's really important. And I think for me, it was when I was at Strzok and I was a young lawyer, I really started to think about what are the types of people I want to be surrounded by. What are their value systems like? Do they align with mine? And for me, it was finding people who really valued, time on family, time with friends, people with a very high degree of integrity. I mean, because granted, I had just watched, people lose their jobs after having worked there for 20 years. And I just found that very disconcerting. I'm like, how can you do this to people who've like literally like given their life to you? But, in hindsight, obviously it's a business, but and I had, several months after I quit to really think about, the type of environment I wanted to join and the type of people I wanted to be around, which I realize is not easily attainable to have that kind of reflection. But I think in terms of the tools, I didn't actually cast a really wide net. I talked to a couple of people, at the time I was just married. So obviously I talked to my husband about it a lot. I spoke with my parents and my sister about it, and maybe one or two friends. And that was really it, because I didn't want to have so many perspectives. And then I think all signs are pointing towards you should leave and try to figure out something else to do. And that's what I did.
I did go to business school as well, but I actually went at night, and I still thank Kidder Peabody and UBS for paying for that, which is a great way to do it, but you really didn't have much time to reflect, just really have Chinese food for dinner at 10 o'clock at night on your way home. So it's a little bit of a different experience for me on the business school side. But I think what's important, and Melissa mentioned this, is networking and having your network. Today, as opposed to when I had started my career, it's so easy to network. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. And whoever's listening to this, if you don't have a LinkedIn account now, you should, the first thing you do after you get off of the Zoom is to make one up. I have 2 kids who are in college, and before they stepped onto campus, I told them, you need to put a LinkedIn account together. It's something that's always evolving. It's always a work in progress. But if you ever want to do something within the business community, even the law community, or something even within medicine, it's important to have a LinkedIn account. Also, I think it's very important for people not to define themselves by their job and by their role. Because unfortunately, in today's environment, we've all seen it, we've all lost our job. And if you're defined by your job, if your friends revolve around your job, and if everything revolves around your job, when you lose that job, it can be devastating. You should define yourself by who you are, by your values, by your skills, and build your relationships within your family and your relationship with your friends. And that really what defines who you are, what your values are, and who your friends and your family are, and have very deep and broad relationships with them. And when you do need to find a new job, then boil it down to what your what are your skills? Are you good at presenting? Are you good at thinking? Are you good at decision making? Are you good at planning? And that can help to show you the road for where your next opportunity is going to be. At some point in your life, I know that before I did what I'm doing now, when I decided to make that transition, I would be seeing different postings and speaking to different people about opportunities. And I'd say, wow, this job description was made for me. I'd send in my resume, I'd write the best cover letter, and I think I'm a pretty good writer. And then the response would be like, well, you're overqualified. And what I learned was that's code for you're too old. And eventually that happens to everybody. And so you need to figure out who you are and what you are, and how to leverage that skill set in your next role. It might be something completely different, or it might be something very similar, but it's your skill set that you have, not the role. You're not defined by being a vice president or managing director or CEO of XYZ Corp. You're defined by being a good, thoughtful person who can build relationships and maybe even can sell product.
Great. I appreciate, I think that the commonality of makes sense as to the been there, done that, right? By virtue of sitting on this panel, I think we're conveying, and through your answers, that in times of adversity, whether it's keeping a small network, finding a career coach, expanding the network, sharing and tapping into shared experiences with others helps to illuminate that I'm not alone in this. This is people have navigated this type of.
Yeah. I would also add mentorship is important. That if you have or you can find mentors, they can be invaluable, and sometimes they come from the most unexpected places.
Certainly. Absolutely. I do want to kick it to some of our questions coming in from our participants. So this is for anyone on the panel. And in the context of navigating change or challenge, are there any habits that have been impactful or helpful, or any books, anecdotes, individuals who have helped you navigate that change in your life?
One of the books that I found to be most impactful was actually Liar's Poker, believe it or not, because it actually, back when I read it in 88, 89, it showed me what Wall Street was like when I got onto a trading floor. And while I'm not going to tell you that pieces of paper and other items didn't hit me in the head, it certainly was an eye-opening to what it would be like, and actually moved me to that direction because I enjoyed the action that was there. That world has since changed, but for me, that was very impactful. I think habits, most importantly, and sort of leads to what I said before, will be just to go back, have other interests. no matter how many hours you work and how much you think about work, it can't be the sole thing about your life. Whether your interests are spending time with a spouse, a partner, or another loved one, whether it's taking your kids to the zoo, it really doesn't matter. Have an interest. If you like wine, which I've grown to appreciate as well, then work on that. Learn to do that, and have something besides work that's on your mind 24/7, because otherwise you could explode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in terms of habits, I'd say for me, it's been exercising. It seems like that's been popular, that's helpful to clear my head. Other habits, I find that I'm very focused, so I can sit down and get things done that maybe if I were distracted would take me twice as long. So I feel like just being really efficient and focused and getting things done. So I can do it in 2 hours instead of 4 hours. That means those other hours I can do something else and go for a walk or do something, be more productive elsewhere. So that's another habit that I find important in life. And then in terms of books, I actually need to read more books. I have a bunch on my list, but one that comes to mind is Shoe Dog, which is by Phil Knight. It's one of the best books. So he's the founder of Nike, and it tells his story. And people often think that successful people, it happened overnight, like they were given it, it just happens. And reading Phil Knight's story, he was probably, don't quote me on this, but working for at least a decade, if not 20 years on Nike before it really became the success that we know it as today. And the struggle and the journey and the effort that goes into building something definitely isn't linear. And that company almost failed many times. So it's just nice to hear other people's stories. And it's a really entertaining book, and everybody knows Nike. And then another book was, it was by the founder of Walmart. It might be made, I think it's called Made in America by Sam Walton. That's another great book that tells the story of Walmart. And those are two books that I would highly recommend.
Yeah, and I also I'm pretty diligent about exercise. I have been since college. I try to work out every day. Clears my mind. I think more clearly. And I've been trying to find time to meditate, even for 10 minutes a day, especially during this pandemic. It's a little crazy with kids around all the time, but I actually find that I'm calmer as well. And it also helps me think more clearly. And in terms of book, as a history major, I really like biographies, and I think the biography of Alexander Hamilton is amazing to read. Talk about someone who really created a life for himself and faced so much adversity. So I highly recommend that.
All right, so let me take a look. I believe we have another question that came in and it just disappeared on me. So give me just 1 minute too. So a question specifically for Melissa came in. And I think all three of our panelists could probably answer this, but the question is, do you believe anything about your Hopkins experience, the education, helped mold your outlook and approach to handling your difficulties? Anything specific from the Hopkins experience that came into play?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first. So Hopkins, for me, I was lucky. I was able to have somewhat of a balanced experience, but I won't kid myself. I worked really, really hard at Hopkins, and I studied hard. And I think what Hopkins did for me, because it was so intense and so, I'll just use the word intense, that everything that came after Hopkins seemed easy. And even the difficult things, yes, they're difficult, but Hopkins was so intense and challenging. I felt so prepared for anything that came afterwards. Even business school was like literally a breeze compared to Hopkins. My graduate degree was also, I just felt like I was expecting something so difficult that because I was prepared for difficult things at Hopkins, that it made my other education and all experiences just seem like a breeze. So that was one thing. The other thing is it teaches you how to work hard, and you have to work hard in life. You also need to have fun, but I think that just Hopkins is a great training ground, and you'll be, if you can get through Hopkins and you can get through, I think, anything in life. So I'd just say that it really prepared me for life and the challenges that life has to bring. And I'd say, I'm just trying to think of anything else, but yeah, that would be, I think, in summary, you'll be prepared for life. No one can take that away from you.
Yeah. To answer that as well, I think I would agree. When I got to Hopkins, it was the most intense experience of my life. I came in there and I was like, wow, there's a lot of really smart people here. And I'm like, am I up to it? You know, I certainly questioned, like, did they make a mistake in admitting me? Like, did someone make a deal just to get me in? And look, over the next 4 years, I found out that they didn't make a mistake and that I deserved to be there. But there are a lot of really smart people there, and it makes you get your game up. And it is very important, you know, and that experience, one, it gives you the confidence. You succeed there, you can succeed anywhere. Not to be Frank Sinatra here, but it certainly gives you it's a confidence building experience, because the competition and the challenges and the intensity is so great.
For me, from an academic standpoint, I think Hopkins really honed my writing and my writing skills, and has helped me become a very clear and effective communicator. Across all the businesses I've worked at over the years. And then I think most importantly is actually my best friends are from Hopkins. I have really, really tight-knit group of friends. 20 years later, we're still really close. And they are the people who I feel most comfortable, talking about these like darker times. We've all been there for each other through these harder times. And I think having that circle has been a tremendous, tremendous asset to me over the years.
Great, and that's a nice segue. I think we have time for one more question. And speaking of the current climate, the question comes in, it says, at this particular time of adversity, if you realize that you're lacking some skills for your career, do you think it's better to stay in school for longer and gain them through the university, or actually go out and gain the skills along the way of your desired career trajectory?
Jessica, why don't you go first?
Sure. I was going to say it's hard without all the information in terms of what the specific skill set is and what the industry is that you are in. But I'm of the belief that just go do it, just try it. I think you learn best by doing, being in the environment and seeing if you really want to pursue it and give it a go. In which point, if your colleagues believe it would be beneficial to pursue a degree, then I would pursue the degree. But that's just my personal perspective on it.
I would echo what Jessica's saying. Without knowing specifics, there's no way to really accurately provide a coherent answer. That said, the only way to succeed is to do it for real. University, college, and education can be a great way to obtain skills. It could also be a great way to delay life as well. And you have to make sure why you're continuing. Is it just you're afraid to go into the real world, and you just want to delay that inevitability, or are you gaining something that you couldn't gain in the real world? It's a lot more expensive to gain it in school.
I guess I'll just chime in here. Echo what everyone else said. I think in times of crisis, when the job market is tough, like people often, I think, do look to school as a solution. So if it is tough to get that job you want and you want to postpone that job and be productive, in the interim, because it can take 6 months or a year to get a job. So I think one perspective is, well, I'll buy myself some time and I'll go back to school. But I would, which I think is perfectly reasonable. But you do want to make sure that it's in something that will help you, make you more qualified for that job, right? So for me, a lot of the jobs that I wanted coming out of my first master's degree, they really were trying to hire people who had MBAs. So it became very clear to me, okay, well, now I know I need to get an MBA, but I'm going to have to work for a couple of years. And they came up with a plan. So if you know if you have an idea of the jobs you want and you think an advanced degree will help put you in a stronger position to get those jobs down the road, then it absolutely makes sense. And if you think you can be productive during an economic downturn by going back to school, I think that also makes a lot of sense.
Great. Well, I think that is about the time that we have. I know that I just saw in the chat there was a link to OneHop. OneHop is similar to LinkedIn. It's a platform that connects alumni with students in ways of either quick answering questions or potential building out of mentorship. So that's a wonderful resource for anyone to look into as part of the Hopkins experience. I just want to thank everyone here on the panel for participating, all of our participants for coming to ask questions and listen to the panelists' experience. But thank you for being here, for been there, done that. We are planning several additional similar panels in the near future, and you can stay up to date with those by checking out events.jhu.edu. Hopefully we can drop that in the chat as well. At events.jhu.edu, panels such as this, miniature courses, even things such as like cooking classes are available. So feel free to check that out for all future offerings. And I lastly want to thank the panelists once again for providing us with your time today and sharing your stories, the winding paths that you've traveled. Bennett, Jessica, Melissa, we appreciate you connecting back with students, other alumni, and being so open and sharing. And last and certainly not least, we want to thank the Second Decade Society for their continued support of our entire community and really ensuring that panels like this regularly happen so that we can share our experiences, we can share our stories, and we can help each other grow towards more fulfilling futures. So thank you to the panelists. Thank you for everyone who came today, and the Second Decade Society. We appreciate it.
Thank
very,
you.
very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.